Today, I want to give you a few imaginary friends. I'm borrowing this idea from the guys at the Bible Project because I think it is really, really helpful. But this is one of the ways that we can think about the biblical idea of wisdom, particularly the wisdom literature of the Old Testament, as varying voices. So I want to introduce you to your first imaginary friend. And she is really smart and kind. She loves you. She really just wants to see you happy and flourishing. And she knows that God made the world to work a certain way. And that when you live with the grain of that design, that you experience the blessings that He has woven throughout the creation. When you come to her and you tell her that you're really excited, but you're also nervous about becoming parents for the first time and having your first kid, she is really excited with you. She tells you that children are a blessing from the Lord, and she encourages you to work hard and to be diligent to raise them well. Yeah, she says to teach them to fear and honor God, to warn them against folly, and to instill in them a strong work ethic. She says, raise them to be kind and just, humble and strong. And then when you're old, they'll care for you. And you're going to enjoy the sweet satisfaction of a life well lived. And you smile from ear to ear. And she is a really sweet friend to have by your side. And then your second friend chimes in. And he says, yeah, that's true. It's good to do those things. But I know people who are just as excited as you are at the idea about becoming parents, and they never got pregnant. My colleague at work was one of the best dads that I've ever met, and his daughter got hit by a drunk driver. My wife and I worked hard our whole lives to teach our kids all of those things. I paid to send my son to one of the best universities in the country. And then I handed down to him the family business that I had worked my whole life to build. And my kid's an idiot. He ran the thing straight into the ground. I found out he never even finished college. He just dropped out and never told us and wasted all the money. So I'm not telling you that all the advice that she just gave you is bad. I'm just saying if you're nervous because you don't really know what to do or what to expect, get used to it. Life's random. You don't always control the outcome. Welcome to the book of Ecclesiastes. While the book of Proverbs tells us that God created good order and stitched it into His world, that He's sewn the world together with wisdom, and that the threads of that wisdom are like streams that run through the creation. They're like veins of gold in the earth that you can tap into and extract the golden insight for a life well lived. The book of Ecclesiastes says, yeah, but not always. Most of the time, it doesn't look like that from my vantage point. In a lot of ways, the world just looks absurd. And it doesn't just look absurd, the world is absurd. And these voices now exist in our Bible together, side by side. In case you were curious, the third book of Old Testament wisdom literature, our third imaginary friend, if you will, is the book of Job. He's old and he's experienced. He has those soft, kind eyes, but you can tell that there's just some scars that he still carries with him. He's heard the counsel that both of your other friends gave you, and he nods along slowly. And he says, they're both right, you know. Listen to her. She knows what she's talking about. But he's not wrong. I know you don't always want to hear it, but don't duck the other way when you see him coming. You're going to need both of these friends by your side in the days ahead. And at the end of all of it, remember, God is God. You're not. He gives and He takes, and whatever tomorrow holds, fear God and give thanks. And I really like this thought experiment of these three books personified as three friends. because it's fun and it's an interesting way to think about the wisdom books, but also because in many ways, that's exactly how Old Testament wisdom literature is supposed to function. It's how it's designed to work. These are your companions. They're companions that you spend time with so that their varying, nuanced voices are there with you as you navigate life and all of its twists and turns. And so it's to the second of these. It's to the critic, the sober-minded realist, the book of Ecclesiastes that we want to bend our ear towards over the upcoming weeks. And the opening words of this book introduce us to its central figure, the teacher. The Hebrew word is Qoheleth, the teacher, or the preacher. The words of the teacher, son of David, king in Jerusalem. And the vast majority of this book are the words of Qoheleth. He opens up in this refrain in verse 2, absolute futility, says the teacher. Absolute futility. Everything is futile. And at the end of the book, in chapter 12, verse 8, he is going to repeat those same exact lines, and he's going to repeat them word for word. Absolute futility, says the teacher. Absolute futility. Everything is futile. And those two statements in 1 verse 2 and 12 verse 8 form kind of two bookends at the beginning and the end of his reflections. We're not 100% sure who's writing the verses that lie kind of outside of these bookends, whether it's chapter 1 verse 1 or chapter 12 verses 9 to 14, the brief section that comes after that. So one possibility is that the author and the teacher are two different people, that the author is writing these things down because he wants you to hear the words of the teacher. So he records this very brief introduction. He records a small postscript at the end, but he wants you to hear what the teacher has to say. The other possibility is that Qoheleth is the one actually writing the book, that the teacher and the author are the same person, and that he's using this kind of third-person introduction as a clever literary device. But either way, the authorship of Ecclesiastes is intentionally anonymous. Some scholars have concluded that this is written by Solomon. You probably even heard in our passage today that the teacher is described as the son of David, king in Jerusalem. It would make sense for that to be Solomon. In verse 12, he again states that he's been king in Israel. In verse 16, that he's amassed wisdom that surpassed all who came before him. Those things do sound a lot like Solomon. But we also know from other ancient Near Eastern literature that it wasn't uncommon, specifically in the realm of wisdom literature, to actually write a book like this and ascribe it to the king. That it could be that the author is developing a character, the king, the learned and wise teacher king, and through his voice, he's making observations on life in the spirit of the wisdom of King Solomon who came before him. Whichever way you slice it, the point still remains that even if this is Solomon who's writing this, he doesn't come out and say, I, Solomon. He leaves it intentionally vague and anonymous. And I think it's so that we might be pulled in to the poetic, literary intrigue of this book as we sit at the feet of the teacher and hear what he has to say as he observes the world around him. As Qoheleth turns over every stone that he can find in every corner of creation, looking for answers, and then he invites us to be the beneficiaries of his quest. And that's where we're going to follow. Over the next 15 weeks, we're going to follow him across the confusing, frustrating expanse of this enigma that we call life. If the scriptures are a beautiful piece of music, if the Bible is an enthralling film score, then the book of Ecclesiastes is like that dissonant minor chord that just leaves an eerie, suspenseful feeling. And it's supposed to sound like that. But as you notice along the way, Ecclesiastes also plays some surprisingly sweet notes. And they might ring out all the richer and more refreshing because of the stark backdrop of the rest of the book behind him. I think that you're going to be uniquely and maybe even surprisingly encouraged by our time that we spend with the teacher. And I'm going to briefly kind of give you two main reasons why I think we desperately need this. Why right now we need the words of Qoheleth as our companion day by day. why Ecclesiastes is a very timely book for today. The first of those is that I would guess that you have felt the unsettled feeling that the world is shifting beneath your feet faster than you can keep up. Have you felt that? I remember being about Coleman's age and being at my grandparents' and them getting the first computer they had ever owned. My grandfather was born into the Great Depression. For their whole lives, typing had always meant a typewriter. And for most of that time, I'm talking about like the classic front strike mechanical kind of typewriter. It wasn't until my mom was growing up that electric typewriters were even really a thing. And I remember my mom helping them unpack this brand new HP PC in the upstairs bedroom, complete with Windows 95. And I remember my grandmother putting on her glasses to read what she called their electronic mailing address and reading it out loud and ending with period COM. And my mom responding .com. To which she said, well, I don't know. That's just what it says here on the card. Period COM. And this is the crazy part. Not only had they lived their whole lives using a typewriter, so had the generation before them. From the 1870s until the 1980s, standard office work involved typewriters for over 100 years. Surely they must have felt like the world was becoming a strange place with this dawn of the computer age and all the electronic mailing addresses and their period COMs. Now I want you to think about how much has changed since then. Again, since that moment that I remember about 25 years ago. If you went from typewriters in the 1870s to typewriters in the 1980s, would you have ever imagined that in 25 years you would go from the startup dial-up tones of AOL to FaceTime and Bitcoin and ChatGPT? Technological advancements used to define epochs of history. The Iron Age lasted over 600 years. 600 years marked by one new technological advancement. New technology today goes obsolete in about 600 days. The ground beneath you is shifting at an unprecedented rate. And if you haven't diagnosed it, it does have an effect on you. And it's got an effect on your neighbors, and it has an effect on your children. Dad, how am I supposed to plan for and start a new career when I don't know if AI is just going to make my whole field extinct by the time I get there? How do you answer that question? I don't know. What are we supposed to do in a world that's shifting and changing and it's impossible to read? We don't know. Have you felt that? Qoheleth is going to resonate with you in that feeling. The second reason this book is timely for today: we've never in the history of humankind had a greater addiction to or an illusion of control. How hot or cold should it be? The answer to that question used to be, what do you mean should be? There isn't a should. It's just however hot or cold it is. That's kind of the way weather works. But that's not how we answer the question, is it? How hot or cold should it be? Well, it should be whatever number I turn my little dial to. And if it's not, a repairman should get here quickly because me lacking precise temperature control is unacceptable. In fact, I shouldn't even have to turn a dial. My house should learn how I like it and be smart enough to adjust the temperature gradually to my liking and to save money where I want to save money. And when I'm getting in the car, I should be able to start it from my phone so that when I get there, the car is properly cooled down or heated up to my comfort and my satisfaction. But our entitlement with control runs much deeper than climate control, doesn't it? Let's get real for a minute. You get a bad diagnosis at the doctor. What's the response? I'm sorry. I don't understand. How could this happen? We were doing everything right. Surely somebody needs to be able to fix this. Tragic things happen, sickness and accidents, disasters and death. And our first instinct is to say, how could this have been prevented? Who didn't do what they were supposed to do? This should have been prevented. All things should be able to be prevented. The teacher is going to shatter that illusion. Over and over and over, the book of Ecclesiastes is going to hold up the mirror of reality before our faces. It's going to show us the relentless march of time, the inevitability of death, and the random cruelty of chance, and shatter that illusion of control. When I was a teenager, if I couldn't be outside playing sports, I wanted to be inside playing sports video games. Madden, FIFA, NHL, 2K, MLB The Show, you name it. And my younger brothers also loved playing too, but the problem was that the controls in some of those games are pretty difficult for young kids to get the hang of. And so I used to set up an extra game controller, and instead of plugging it in, I would just tuck it around the back of the console underneath the desk. And then I'd let my youngest brother think that he was playing as whatever team I was controlling, and he would just be on cloud nine playing along right beside me, thinking he was unstoppable. Until one day that all ended because our other brother got so mad about losing and seeing how happy it made our youngest brother thinking he had just won that he reached down, pulled up the cord, and said, "Your controller isn't even plugged in. Your controller isn't ever plugged in." And his whole world was shattered right there in that moment. This is what Qoheleth is going to helpfully do for you. He's going to reach below the desk. He's going to pull up the cord, and he's going to say, "Your controller isn't even plugged in. Your controller wasn't ever plugged in." Absolute futility, says the teacher. This word translated futility, other translations might say vanity, or others meaningless. What does it actually mean? Why so many different translations? The word is hevel. Its meaning is one of the main keys to understanding this whole book. It appears almost 40 different times. And it's one of the Hebrew words for breath, or for smoke, or for vapor. And this is the first connotation of its meaning, that everything is vaporous. You can see it. It's there. It's not nothing. It's not just an illusion. It is a thing. But what happens when you try to grab it? When you try to wrangle it and manipulate it and control it? What happens when you try to take hold of a wisp of smoke? When the Benedictine sisters were contemplating how to solve a problem like Maria, they famously sung, "How do you catch a cloud and pin it down?" You can't. That's Qoheleth's question. How do you catch a cloud, smoke, vapor, breath, and pin it down? You can't. It's vaporous. And life is like that. It's like a wisp. The psalmist lamented the same thing in Psalm 144. He said, "Man is like a breath," using that same word, hevel. Man is like hevel, like a breath. His days like a passing shadow. Hevel speaks to this vaporousness. Okay, so why don't we just translate the word vapor? Well, because it's not the full meaning. Because Qoheleth's also going to use hevel to refer to things that are wrong. Things that are just not the way that they should be. Things that are like a glitch in the system of how Proverbs said it was supposed to work. Something that's so out of whack that it's offensive to think about it. Maybe a good English word to use here would be absurd. That's just absurd. And still other times, hevel carries more the connotation of something being empty or hollow, It's not necessarily fleeting. In these moments, it's not necessarily absurd, but it's just wholly unsatisfying. You get to the end of it and there's nothing. Since none of these English words seem to really capture the whole, what we're going to do is we're going to just add this word to our vocabulary. Hevel. We're going to use it a lot. You now have a Hebrew word that's going to become part of how you think. You're not going to translate it. You're just going to think in Hebrew for that word. Hevel. That's pretty cool, right? And Qoheleth starts to flesh out this picture of what hevel is and what it feels like by giving us examples from nature. Picking up in verse 3. What does a person gain for all his efforts that he labors at under the sun? A generation goes and a generation comes, but the earth remains forever. The sun rises, the sun sets. Panting, it returns to the place where it rises. Gusting to the south, turning to the north. Turning goes the wind. And the wind returns in its cycles. All the streams flow to the sea, yet the sea is never full. To the place where the streams flow, there they flow again. Generations come and go, and the earth goes nowhere. The Iron Age came and went. There still stand the Rocky Mountains. Rome rose and fell. There's the Rockies. They look the same. Major world civilizations engaged in commerce and exploration and war and power struggles. The Atlantic was crossed, the West was settled, the globe was circumnavigated. Still the Rockies. Typewriters came and went. Windows 95 got replaced by Windows 98, and then they both ended up in a dustbin somewhere. But none of that made a dent in the mountains. The 2025 Colorado Rockies baseball team lost 119 games in a single season. And yet here we are in 2026, and it still hasn't altered the actual Rockies whatsoever. I want you to think about the greatest empire, the greatest civilization. I want you to think about the most gigantic of historical giants that you can think of. One who kind of stood and beat their breast and stood defiantly like a captain at the prow of his ship and said, "Make no mistake, I'm going to make my mark in the world." What kind of mark did they make? Not much. Maybe they dug a thing or two. Maybe they dammed a river here or there. But the earth looks about the same. So when they swore they would make a mark, they left about as significant a mark on the earth as a mosquito leaves on my arm when I'm out coaching the boys' baseball at night. It irritates me for a bit. I scratch it. It scabs. It goes away. Can't really tell it was ever there. Generations come and go, but the earth remains. Let me ask you this. How does it feel getting up every day for work? How does it feel to live for the weekend and then know that every weekend is followed by a Monday? How does it feel that every vacation that you have ever gone on has ended? Maybe you cruised the Caribbean. Oh my gosh, it was wonderful. The weather and the food, and let me just tell you about. Maybe you traveled to another country. What an experience. The scenery, the history. And they had the most unbelievable. Guess who was waiting for you after all of that? Your old pal Monday. How did that feel to come back from vacation and have Monday waiting on your doorstep saying, "Good to see you, buddy"? Did you feel like the sun? Because it rises and sets. And then guess what it's going to do tomorrow? It's going to rise and set. Guess what it's going to do after that? Rise and set. How about on special occasions, like to celebrate its birthday? You guessed it. It's going to rise and set. and then panting, it's going to hurry back to the place where it needs to rise again. And you've probably thought of your week like that before. I spend all day just waiting to crash into bed at night. And then before I know it, I'm waking up to wait the whole next day for the same thing, to crash into bed at night. Why? For what purpose? It seems fleeting. It feels like the wind. It gusts to the south, it turns to the north. Turning goes the wind, and returns in its cycles. It's like a dog chasing its own tail in circles. This is one of the things that I love about the teacher. His role is very much like the role of a stand-up comedian. Bobby Jamieson really cleverly draws this comparison. Stand-up comedy thrives on observational humor. What does the stand-up comic do? He observes the absurdity of the world. He observes the absurdity of people and life all around us, and then he pulls it to the surface and he just holds it out in front of us for us to look at. And we all laugh because we know it's true. We just never stopped to pull it to the surface quite like that before. This is more or less what Qoheleth does. Take a look at verse 7. All the streams flow to the sea, yet the sea is never full. To the place where the streams flow, there they flow again. This could just as easily be a Jerry Seinfeld bit. What's the deal with rivers? I mean, have you ever thought about what it would be like to be a river? Night and day, you're just working your butt off to carry thousands of gallons of water down to the ocean. And no matter how much you dump in there, it never fills up. But you're a determined little river. And so you call all your river friends, and they call all their river uncles and their river cousins, and you decide together, let's fill this thing up once and for all. And here we are, thousands of years later, with all the rivers and all their river relations working overtime for millennia, not even taking a single sick day, and the ocean still isn't full. Qoheleth pulls this to the surface, and he sets it in front of us for our consideration. Not necessarily just for humor, but for reflection. Because if you're honest, your life is a lot like rivers. What's the deal with laundry? Washing, drying, folding, again and again. And yet the hamper is never empty. And we could laugh at that. But if we're honest, it's probably the things like laundry that most often make you want to crawl into the fetal position and go lay in a hole somewhere. We wash the dishes, but the sink is always full of them. We change the diapers, but somehow they're always in need of changing. We rotate the tires, we file the taxes, we cut the grass, we change the oil, we clean out the fridge, we get the MVI done, we visit the dentist, we buy groceries, we mop the floor, we feed the kids. Are any of those things done? Can anyone in this room tell me that they don't have to go home and do at least one of those tonight? Generations come and go and the earth goes nowhere. The sun just does the same thing over and over. The wind blows here and there and back again without really any observable purpose. Streams flow endlessly, carrying untold amounts of water to the ocean, but their job is literally never done. The ocean is never full. They just keep having to flow. All things are wearisome. This is Qoheleth's conclusion. The cyclical mundanity of life is absurdly wearisome. This pattern of the same thing over and over, going in circles, is not only bizarre, it feels wrong, and it's wearying. In other words, life is hevel. These are his conclusions. All things are wearisome, more than anyone can say. The eye is not satisfied by seeing, or the ear filled with hearing. What has been is what will be. What has been done is what will be done. There's nothing new under the sun. Can anyone say about anything, look, this is new? It's already existed in the ages before us. And there's no remembrance of those who came before. And of those who will come after, there will also be no remembrance by those who follow them. Much labor produces little. Life is cyclical and mundane. We do and we do, we go and we go. We toil and we spin and we sleep and we do it all over again. And what is there to show for it other than weariness and dissatisfaction? And on top of that, nothing is novel. It's all been done before. It's like Star Wars sequels. Can anyone say, oh, look, something new? No. It's all tired. It's all remakes. Nothing that we do is novel or original. It's all been done before. And nothing that we do really gets remembered. You know what that means? We won't be either. Do you know your great-grandparents' names? How about your great-great-grandparents' names? Do you know what they did? Do you know what they were like? Do you know where they worked? The Pixar movie Coco is all about the importance of keeping the memory of past generations alive. The teacher says, it's a losing battle. Your ofrenda is only too big. Try as you might, you can't escape the hevel. It's a losing battle. You will forget the ones who came before you, and your descendants will forget you. It's been happening for a long, long time, and it's going to keep going on because life is absurd. It's like a breath. It's here 1 minute, it's gone the next. You can't shape it. You can't control it. You can't define it. It's absurd. All the labor that you do over and over gets you nowhere. You barely make a dent. Try as you might, and the people who come after you won't even remember you trying. It's like swinging at air. And this is what I want you to know. That's okay. This is what I want you to understand, brothers and sisters, members of King's Table Church, family, friends, visitors. As we sit under the words of Qoheleth, life is hevel. It's absurd. It's like a breath. And that's okay. This is one of the best things that Ecclesiastes does for us. It allows us to see and feel and experience the absurd and the futile, sometimes even the senseless aspects of the world that we live in, and not freak out. To not have to have our world and our faith rocked, sending us into a tailspin. To be honest, to not really even have to be all that surprised. To say, yeah, that checks out. That's what the teacher told us to expect. The world's bizarre, and that's okay. Because for one, life under the sun isn't all we've got. We don't need it to be perfect. If this was all we had, then its absurdity would probably crush us. But it's not, so it doesn't. But here's the big one. This is the primary reason that I want you to be okay living in hevel. Because Jesus is its king. Have you ever thought about that? Part of the gospel is that after Jesus died on the cross and was buried and rose again on the third day, he ascended. But he didn't just float up into the sky to not be here anymore. He's not like some kind of piece of Broadway staging that was lifted into the rafters so that Act 2 could start. No, Paul tells the Ephesians that God has raised him and seated him in the heavenly places to rule and to reign. To the Philippians, he says that God has exalted him and given him a name above every name. That Jesus was raised and then he was taken up to rule, to reign over all of creation. Right now, you are living under the present and active reign of Christ. Right now, he's the king on the throne. Paul says to the Corinthians that Christ must reign, saying, for God has put all things in subjection under his feet. Friends, all things are in subjection to Christ, even the hevel. Is tomorrow another Monday? You bet. Is your sink full of dishes and your hamper full of laundry? If it looks anything like ours, it is. Is Miles going to fight going to sleep tonight? Probably. Do you have to spend all week doing more or less the same thing that you did last week? Yeah. Is it going to keep you from having to do it again next week? No. Does that need to bring you to your knees in despair? No. Why not? Is Jesus Lord over your laundry? Yeah. At the end of a sleepless night, is he still on the throne? He is. Is he just as much king on Monday as he is on Sunday? Yes. Does it all look like hevel to him? No. He sees above it. He sees around it. He sees through it. It sure seems like hevel down here. Sure seems absurd. I can't tell which strings to pull. It seems like every string that I pull makes the whole thing unravel. I got good news for you guys. My controller was never plugged in. He pulls the strings. He's the king over the hevel, not the breath of a man inside of it, like we are. Life is absurd, and that's okay, because Jesus is king. So this is my invite to you. This is my challenge. Lean in as we study the book of Ecclesiastes together. Pull your chair a little bit closer and stick around. Pay a little bit more attention. Take a few more notes. These are dissonant notes in a dissonant book. But the teacher is also going to give you some refreshment. He's going to play notes that are especially sweet. There's going to be some minor chords in a book of minor chords. But you're going to miss them if you're not here. What would it look like to not miss church once between now and the middle of November? Not out of some legalistic rule because you have to come or God's going to be mad at you. What would it look like to not miss church once between now and the middle of November because what we're going to be learning together is going to be too good to miss? And that you just want to get every last drop of it. Why not try it? Why not say, I'm there. I'm there for the book of Ecclesiastes. Let's find out what the teacher has to teach us. Life is hevel. And Jesus is king. And the teacher is inviting you to come with him as he chases down every path that he can find under the sun, and then let you glean the wisdom of his experience. The question is, what are you going to do? Are you going to duck the other way when you see his unsettling frankness coming down the hallway and try to avoid as many conversations as you can with him because you don't like the way he makes you feel? Or are you going to take the words of your new friend, Qoheleth, to heart? It's up to you. We're following him on this journey, and we would love for you to lean in and learn from the teacher as he teaches us together. Let's take a few moments and consider the things that the teacher has for us, even here in these first 11 verses.